Look, we understand that in most cases, we, as teachers, we tend to fail our students based on how we deliver our learning, because some numbers is natural numbers, including A0. And then now we have integers. Now you see, integers is like a number line, a perfect number line, whereby we including natural numbers, whole numbers, you see. Now, I'm looking for the lowest common multiple. From the lowest common multiple, if I start from right for both the multiples of 6 and 4, 2 is a factor of 8. Remember, factors is numbers that can be divisible by 8. And when you multiply,
simplified, Aurus are the guys who makes it looks easy. Your number one learning channel. Ooh. Ooh.
you see, Simplified RSA as an organization, we would like you guys to think of us as your academic clock. So now, whenever you see our videos appear on your feeds, you must just know that at least at this point, the academic engine has started. So meaning everything is getting serious now. We are here to advise you things to look out for, things to commit to for you to achieve the best marks that you feel you're gonna have to achieve this year. As we all know, whenever the year starts, most students have New Year resolutions to work harder academically. Different people have different New Year resolutions, but majority of students, they just want to be that best student in class. Well, normally it does work out if you put your work into it. Sometimes we forget as the year goes, but then we are here to support you and make sure you keep up with the work. By the way, we one of the institutions that advocates for students. So we make sure we are on the student side. So look, we understand that in most cases, we, as teachers, we tend to fail our students based on how we deliver our learning. Because sometimes it could be a thing where I could be teaching you the way my teacher taught me something. And I think that is way wrong, because sometimes things change, man, and times changes. Way back then, I think we couldn't even figure it out that what you learn from each grade builds you up to apply for the next grade, and so forth and so forth. A grade 12 student sometimes may struggle from work that they could have learned in grade 8, because we don't have someone who probably advised them or whatsoever, or rather the CAPS curriculum, the way it's designed, you are expected to remember something that you could have learned 5 years ago. And that's not the case, because we get different teachers teaching different grades. I'm saying this because you may get a student who could be in grade 10, 11, or 12, struggling from a mere thing like understanding the difference between lowest common multiple and lowest common multiple and high common factor, LCM and HCF, high common factor. These two things, a grade 10 learner, they sing them out loud. Well, at that moment, it would be to get marks, right? And then sometimes over the holidays of December, you probably forget whatever you learned for that year, and then you move to the next grade. And then when you get to grade 12, you get stuck over some things which the root cause was from a couple of years back. Now, this video is not made for any grade. Whoever who's in high school or even grade 7, grade 6, it might help, because we need to understand the number system, which we forget that it is the most important part for us to can even break down that algebra, that grade 12 paper, that grade 11 paper, that grade 10 paper of mathematics. To break it down, we need to understand the number system. And the number system and the concept of LCM and the concept of HCF, it is taught on lower grade, but sometimes we get to see students who are like senior struggle at something like that. So I just want us to go back and look at how can it have gone wrong, or rather just to remind each other what the system looks like and how to differentiate. So you need to understand, what do we mean by real numbers? What do we mean by rational numbers? What do we mean by irrational numbers? What do we mean by integers? What do we mean by whole numbers? What do we mean by natural numbers? You see all those things? Because in most cases, when you are analyzing your functions, we get functions in our grades in different forms. When you are analyzing your functions, you need to give out the domains, you need to give out the range, and you need to explain if it is an element of real numbers. But sometimes you don't even understand, what are these real numbers? What is an integer? So those Malangana little things, that's the theoretical part of mathematics that we fail to think it applies in grade 12, because you learned that 1 plus 1 is equals to 2 in grade 1, but yet in grade 12, you still apply the very same theory of 1 plus 1 is 2. It has never changed. It remained the same. So is the number system. So is LCM. So is HCF. But first of all, let's start with the number system. So I'm going to share this right now. So here we have the number system, right? As we have the number system, you can see it starts from the center. From the center, we have natural numbers. Natural numbers, it's anything you can count. So here is an example of natural numbers. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, up to infinity. The exact numbers, more like discrete numbers, something you can count straight, number of. When you count number of people in your classroom, regardless of what age difference it may be, you can't say, I have 2.5 people. If you have a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 20-year-old, you're going to count them as 3 people. Those are natural numbers. Now, when we talk about whole numbers, but notice something. On natural numbers, they start from 1 going up to infinity, but then it never includes 0. So it starts from 1 exactly without including a 0. But when you look at a whole number, it's more like natural numbers that added a 0 on them. So a whole number, we're talking about natural numbers whereby now they start with 0. So whole numbers is natural numbers including a 0. And then now we have integers. Now you see, integers is like a number line, a perfect number line, whereby we're including natural numbers, whole numbers, and also negative values, you see. So it starts from 0, 1, 2, going that side up to positive infinity, and then -1, -2, -3, going that side up to negative infinity. Those are integers. When we talk about integers, that's what we're talking about. And then when we talk about rational numbers, now that's when we talk about all the fractions, anything that can be represented in the form of a fraction, whether improper or proper fraction, as long as it can be represented in the form of a fraction, a over b, it becomes an integer. But look, we know that in a fraction, the denominator cannot be equals to 0. Because for instance, if you have 1 over 0 and you punch this on your calculator will give you error. But mathematically, we say 0 goes infinitely many values into 1. Hence, it's a bigger number such that it can't even fit on a screen of a calculator. But another argument can also be that 0 doesn't really exist because it's nothingness. But that's another story for another day. Now, we have irrational numbers. Irrational numbers is the opposite of rational numbers. So anything that cannot be represented in the form of a fraction, but it is decimal though, but it can't be represented in the form of a fraction. Like those numbers that keeps on adding on a calculator, they can't be represented in a fraction. For example, like a pi, we know that as much as we say pi is equals to 3.14, but the number of pi is 3.14, and then it continues over and over and over. So like square root of 2, for instance, it could fall under irrational numbers because you can't put it in a form of a fraction, though it is decimal of some sort. So these are the number system. It is important to understand this part. You know why? I'll show you how it connects. So now that's how the number system goes, right? Now, let me show you something. LCM, HCF. Now, I want us to understand lowest common multiple and highest common factor. Lowest common multiple and highest common factor. So suppose we need to find lowest common multiple between, let me say 4 and 6, for instance. If we need to get the lowest common multiple between 4 and 6, I need to find the multiples of 6 first. And multiples of 6 are 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. Now I will find the multiples of 4. Now the multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. You see, now I'm looking for the lowest common multiple. From the lowest common multiple, if I start from right for both the multiples of 6 and 4, I can see that the lowest common multiple that they have is 12. 12 is the lowest. Although I have another multiple, which is 24. 24 and 24 are also common multiple, but they are not the lowest. So the lowest I will go with is 12. Then I say the lowest common multiple between 4 and 6 is 12. That's how we get LCM. In terms of a highest common factor, this time around is different. You might have a lowest common factor, but it is not what you are looking for. You are looking for the highest one. Now, let's make an example. Let's get the highest common factor between, say, 8 and 12. We are looking for the highest common factor between 8 and 12. What I need to do first is to find the factors of 8. Now, factors of 8 are going to be 1 is a factor of 8. 2 is a factor of 8. Remember, factors is numbers that can be divisible by 8. And when you multiply them together, they must give you 8 somehow. 4 is a factor of 8. And also 8 itself is a factor of 8, right? And then let's look for factors of 12. So factors of 12 are 1 is a factor of 12. 2 is a factor of 12. 3 is a factor of 12. 4 is a factor of 12. 6 is a factor of 12. And also 12 itself is the factor of 12, right? But here we are looking for the highest common factor between 8 and 12. Now look at this. 1 and 1 is a common factor between 8 and 12, but it is not the highest. 2 and 2, it is also a common factor between 8 and 12, but it is not the highest, it's the lowest. 3 is not there on 8. 4 and 4 is the highest common factor between 8 and 4. Hence we say the highest common factor between 8 and 12 is 4. So this is the concept that you must use when you are finding the highest common factor. This is the concept that you must use when you are finding lowest common multiple. I hope it makes sense. So sometimes you don't have to go straight and teach students how to memorize question paper without understanding the theory, because for you to can break down that quadratic equation, for you to can break down that completing a square, for you to can break down anything that has anything to do with a variable, How can you understand a variable, something that stands for the number, while you are failing to understand the nature of the numbers itself? And I mean, how can you understand that quadratic? The reason why we end up struggling with things like nature of roots is because we are just memorizing. We are not analyzing the numbers. So we are not teaching students how to analyze mathematically. We are teaching them how to analyze a paper, or rather how to memorize, how to solve a paper in order to get marks. But sometimes when time allows, we can go back and do the theories and help those students who want to make a career out of those mathematics without just having to pass, but understand from the basics. Otherwise, if you need more of these tips, and if you need me to keep going, and if you need to motivate me, you see how my hands are? Please subscribe. Yeah, please hit the subscribe button, hit the reminder button. Also, we offer private lessons at a very reasonable amount. So what we do is a fixed fee that you pay monthly, and then we just learn throughout on Zoom after school every day. If you want to know more about that, please send us a WhatsApp, or rather an email. Here are the contacts. Other than that, I'm Mr. Maimane, he who was born with a hot potato in his mouth to preach the gospel. It could have been the Bible, but it went academical, scientifically, mathematically, whatever you can think of. But otherwise, I'm out, yo.
Simplified, or a the guys who makes it looks easy.